Okay, everyone, so we'll get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Projectiology Bridge Book Club. Tonight, we are joined by facilitators Magali Ornelas and Sandy Gustus. And first, just a few administrative reminders that we will be recording the first part of the meeting. We'll be stopping the recording in the middle when we have our breakout sessions, or we may just stay in a group if the group is small. And that's where we share, our experiences, and then we'll start recording again when we come back as a group. And then we'll present the technique for the month and then close the meeting. So just remember, during the meeting, feel free to just speak up if you have a question or you want to interact with the people in the group. You can also use the chat function in Zoom, or the raise your hand function as well if you want to say something and you don't want to interrupt. But please feel free to speak up. The facilitators are here to answer any questions you have during the presentation as well. So yeah, feel free to speak up if you want to. Also, we're going to be conducting a poll. So if you could please participate at some point, either during or after the meeting, and we'll put the link to the poll in the chat. So I'll post it now. So if you could just click on that link and enter and answer, there's just a couple of questions that we're keeping track of just for research purposes. So it'd be great if you could participate. So let's get kicked off. We'd like to introduce our facilitators for this meeting, Magali and Sandy. Magali Ornelas is from Brazil and currently lives in Australia. She is a clinical psychologist and graduated with a degree in biological sciences and a bachelor's in psychology, as well as a postgraduate degree in cognitive behavioral therapy and group dynamics. Magali is a volunteer, a teacher of Conscientiology, and a Penta practitioner, and has worked in several institutions, including IIPC, CIEC, Conscious, and Conscious. She is currently a volunteer for the Pre-IC Isaac, which is the interassistential services for the internalization of Conscientiology, that's a mouthful, as well as the co-coordinator of the Bridge Book Club. She is also the author of various articles and verbets of the Encyclopedia of Conscientiology. Sandy Gustus is Australian, but has spent the past 26 years living overseas, mainly in Europe, where she first became involved in Conscientiology in the year 2000. She holds an arts degree and a postgraduate diploma in education and is a chartered public relations practitioner. Sandy volunteered and taught with the International Academy of Consciousness in London for many years, and more recently became a volunteer with Conscientious. She has published numerous articles on the consciousness and related paranormal phenomenon, and is the author of Less Complete, A Guide to Experiencing the Human Condition Beyond the Physical Body, which has been published in English, French, Portuguese, Romanian, and Turkish. By day, she is a communications professional in the financial services industry, and by night, a Penta practitioner. Thank you for being here, Magali and Sandy, and I'll now hand it over to you.
Thanks very much for the nice introduction, Mashiko, and hi, everyone. Really great to see you all here and to be able to share this time together. As we typically have students on these calls who are quite new to Projectiology, Magali and I have pitched this session at beginner level, so as everyone can really benefit from the discussion. But we also want to have some interaction so as we can draw on the knowledge and experience of this group and really make this session as useful as possible. This is our goal here today. So please do jump in and engage when we throw out a question. We'll be putting a few questions in here and there, and would love to hear from you. Magali, just before I start the presentation, do you want to say a quick hello to the group?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Sandy. And thank you, everyone. Thank you I'm glad to be here with you, and also for the opportunity that I have to present that chapter. So that's it.
Cheers. So today we're looking at part 7 of Projectiology, which is the pre-projection physical waking state, which covers chapters 175 to 196. The next slide. So starting with chapter 175, which is the chronological analysis of lucid projection. So this chapter introduces part 7 by positioning the pre-projection physical waking state in the broader context of the entire projective cycle as it unfolds through chronological time. And the projective cycle includes what happens before, during, and after a projection. But today, we're only going to focus on what happens prior to a projection. Magali, was there anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah, sure. It's the author is really professional in out-body experience. So the tips that he gives in these chapters are really important to have a real lucid projection. So I think for those that is interested in have a lucid projection, those chapters is going to help a lot. It's a lot of details, but those details are important to us to have if we want to produce a projection. I think that's
great.
That's it.
Thanks, Magali. So we can move to the next slide. Chapter 176 outlines here the stages of the lucid projection, which are firstly the pre-projection physical waking state. So this is, of course, where we do all the preparation for departure. The second phase, a stage, is the takeoff. So this is the exteriorization of the consciousness. The third stage is the extra physical period of the consciousness. This is the time that we spend outside the body. The fourth stage is the interiorization or the re-entry of the consciousness into the human body. And then the final phase is the post-projection physical waking state. So here we have we're dealing with the outcomes or consequences of the experiment. So, for example, did you meet a helper outside the body who gave you some input on an issue you're facing that you need to follow up on? Did you perhaps retrieve a memory from past life that can help you manage a difficult relationship, and so on? We can go to the next slide.
So these chapters is about doorways to lucid projection. In those chapters, the author, he discussed these doors that really is altered state of consciousness that we can use to go out of the body. What he discussed in this chapter is that all altered state of consciousness can be an opportunity to us to go out of the body. For example, if you are in a catalepsy, projection catalepsy, that is when you are inside your body, but you cannot move yourself because, with the discoincidence of the bodies, you are stuck in there and you cannot move. So instead of, like normally we say, when we are in this state of catalepsy, we can move, do a small movement and come back to the body. Or we can also try to go out of the body. So other state like dream, you also can use a lucid dream to go out of your body. So in the chapter, he has a list of altered state that we can use to go out of our body. So you can use this state to come back to your body or to go out of your body. So it's up to you to get this opportunity to have a projection.
On to the next slide. Chapter 178 is talking about the date of the projective experiment. And so the actual date itself that we're trying to have this projection, or we have a projection, it might seem insignificant at first, but it's really worth noticing the details around when we project in a diary of our projections. Because with this, over time, you will start to see factors relating to related to timing can influence, in fact, your projectability. And of course, it can also serve as an historical record. So do note the date. It could end up being significant or useful later on. For example, you could look back at the date in the future and see, in fact, that the projection you had was precognitive. Maggie, I think you have a nice example of a precognitive projection, right? And something around the date.
I have several examples because I'm so bad in take notes, you know. But usually sometimes I do take notes of my projections, but I noticed that many times I forgot to put the date of the projection. And one of the time that is really important to me today is one time I had a precognition. So I knew that someone was coming, the date and everything. And when it actually the fact happened, I couldn't see the date that I had the projection. I had an idea of the month, but I didn't have the actual date. So I think it's really important to us. The first thing, just write the date in your, you know, in your notes, in your diary.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And then, thanks for that, Maggie. Along with the date, you can also note a few more details. For example, day was a national or a public holiday, for example. If it's an atypical day for any reason, for example, your sleep pattern was not normal, you could note down the phase of the moon, could be something interesting, and any other details that are specific to you. For example, it can be relevant for women to see if there is any link between the phase of their menstrual cycle and projectability. So I have a question here. Does anyone have an example when they did record the date of a projection and that date later turned out to be meaningful in some way? Or conversely, did you omit to do that and later found that you needed that date or regretted not having it at least? Does anyone have anything to share there?
I, for a number of years, was really good about recording dates and times and experiences, and I did it just on advice as opposed to a real intimate initiative to go, yeah, you know, to do it. But it's been brilliant. Like, I have quite a comprehensive archive of details, and when I want to go and research and I want to remember. And I want to find the specifics, maybe I'm writing an article or something, and if you've got the details there, it's really a really fantastic help. And also the chronology of the experiences you have. Sometimes you might misremember and you think one came after another, but actually
right.
So yeah, really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for sharing. So you're finding that's more useful as an historical kind of archive rather than noticing, you know, the details around the date, how it might affect your projectability. It's more the emphasis.
Yeah, at this stage, the research I've done and how I've used it, yeah, that's right.
Okay, Magali, I think we can move on to the next slide.
So here's, I put those two chapters together because one talks about meteorological conditions prior to lucid projection, and the other one is ambient temperature. So it's also important to notice the meteorological conditions, because those factors, even if it's the climate shouldn't interfere with the projection in theory, it does interfere because our psychological conditioning right? So it's important to us, even if you are in the beginning of trying to get a projection, it's good to do it in a weather that is, in a climate that is really good for you. Not some people can have a bad situation with a storm or anything. So that is a tip from the author, right? But anyway, that is a psychological condition. But about the temperature, the thing changed, because temperature is really important. It's a physiological condition. So if you have high or low temperature in your space, in the space that you're gonna try to project, that can be difficulties, can bring difficulties to you to relax your muscles, to have the really, you know, because when you're hot, your blood starts to, you know, or things can start to be or bad for you, like too hot or too cold, and then you cannot relax enough to have a projection. So the author said that ideal temperature is 20 Celsius or 68 Fahrenheit. Those 20 Celsius degree or 68 Fahrenheit. And I really tried that, and it's really good when the weather, the temperature is a little bit low. In my case, I can relax more. So everyone can try here, right?
Yes. Thanks, Magali. We go to the next slide. So chapter 180 is talking about the physical base of the projector, right? So what is the physical base? This is the safe location where we choose to park our physical body while we're projected from it. And the best and the most physical base is your own bedroom, then, because this is where you have the maximum control over the environment. So Dr. Vieira actually provides a lot of tips in this chapter, connecting the setup of the physical base to your level of projectability. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into all of those here, but I do really encourage you to take time to read through all of those, because this is going to make a difference to the success that you have. But if I was to pick out one key message from the chapter, it is that it is really critical to be able to secure the safety of your physical body while the consciousness is projected, and therefore unable to operate or project the physical body, right? So as a bare minimum, you need to be able to close the windows and lock the door. Magali, I think you have some more to add.
Yes, is the next slide, please. So here is it. So one phrase that I read, it stuck with me because I think it's really important. The physical base with an elevated atmosphere of rationalized or intellectual emotions inclined to intraphysical consciousness to have lucid projections in mental soma, in the mental somatic dimension. I think that is really important. So that means that the more you take care of your physical base, the greater can be your experience. So thinking about that, how you take care about your own space, you know, and that doesn't mean only the physical space, but also your body. That is, it's also your physical base, right? Your brain, your body. So what you think, and also what you're doing, how is your body, how is your how you're feeling. So we are gonna talk about that later, but it's to us to understand better we are in our intraphysical base, the energies that are surrounding our intraphysical base and surround ourselves, our own energy, we can achieve better projections, longer, and maybe even, like he says, in the mental somatic dimension. So you can go on the next slide, please.
I just have a quick question about this
Yes.
point. Like how do you, I mean, when we talk about the projective base, I guess usually it's the bedroom, right? And when I read about it, or when it says, you know, rationalized, I can't, the words aren't there anymore, but like rationalized emotions, then I suppose when I read it, I associate that with study and with kind of mental somatic activity, which I don't know, like part of me thinks, well, isn't that something you do in the study rather than in your bedroom, right? In your bedroom, I mean, yeah. So I guess just curious, how would you say you create this holothosene in your bedroom?
Yeah. That's it. Just okay. Just one thing that is in this chapter that caught my attention is that physical base is not just our space. The first physical base is our brain in our body. So I don't think it's only about study. I think it's about how is your, you know, your brain in a terms of condition, your psychological condition, your body as in a terms of how much you take care of that is not contaminated or, you know, in a bad state. That's how I see that. And so as your first base, you should take care more about yourself, like body and mind, than actually only the physical base. So sorry, Sandy.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Mugli, what you added there. And Kim, just to add to that, I think then when we're thinking about the room as a physical base, it could be something as simple as having some books about projectiology next to your bed, projections of the consciousness, for example, and reading a chapter before you go to sleep, as opposed to perhaps sitting in bed with your laptop playing, you know, a computer game that winds you up and is quite aggressive and creates a completely different holothosene. So I think there's that element of that in there as well. I think we move to the, does that help, Kim?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Also, you can come back. Yeah, that's one. It's still here. So I think that slides also can help more, Kim, but please bring your questions, guys. He talks about projectarium in those chapters. And the projectarium is this physical base that is the ideal base to us to project. How is that? So it's a place that you can control all the factors, no? All the, like, the sound that is important. Many of the things that we are gonna to talk about here is like, you know, the sound, the temperature, the light, everything counts to have this state that we can actually make it easier for us to go out of our body. So projectarium, maybe the best thing I thought is that maybe there is some projectariums around, maybe it's not, but how about we make our intraphysical base as close as we can of a projectarium, if we really want to achieve that, you know?
Yes.
So next slide. Oh, you want to add something here?
Yeah, just to add that I don't know how many of you have experienced a projectarium. The one I know of is in Vieira in Portugal. belongs to the International Academy of Consciousness. And I did have an experiment in there many years ago now, and I think that for me was that it was 100% soundproof. So a lot of the other conditions that can affect our projectability these days we can control quite well with air conditioning and things like that, but the sound can be difficult to control. So this was really interesting for me, the dedicated projectarium. So yes, we can go on to the next slide. So now looking at chapter 182, which talks about ambient light. So in terms of what is the optimal lighting for the physical base, the two extremes of maximum light and complete darkness do disturb most people. So really the ideal is that we have a low level of illuminations. So it might be a small discrete lamp, or if it's during the day, you might just have a few rays of light coming into the room. And having a little light is good. Why? Because it's going to allow you to orient yourself in the room when you lie down and when you get up, and to avoid feeling your way in the dark and perhaps having a minor accident. On to the next slide, please.
Okay, here is ambient noise. So what we know is that the noise can really disturb our projection, right? It's normally noise is something that can disturb even our equilibrium, our daily life. If we have an amount of noise, it can be really harmful to ourselves. So here there is this point of physical and psychological ways to control noise that we are going to talk about. But also, if you are aiming to be a projector, a professional projector, so you should try to find a place to live where you have less noise, because it's projection in a bar under your house doesn't get along. So if you have lots of noise around that you cannot control, it's really difficult. So I think there is some solutions, and Sandy, can you bring some solutions that the chapter?
Yeah, sure. But just to that point, Magali, Dr. Vieira again does provide a lot of tips in that chapter about what to look out for when you're looking for somewhere to live. So again, it's really worth going over that chapter in detail. So in terms of potential solutions, so earplugs are a possible solution, but they actually only block out about 20 decibels. And to put that in context, that's the equivalent of the sound of a mosquito. So they're not blocking out a huge amount of noise. Double glazing on the windows can be really effective. But I think perhaps one of the best solutions is running an air conditioner, because it helps, it produces a white noise, and that white noise kind of blends with and masks other noises from the environment. So that is quite an effective solution. And of course, thick curtains can absorb a lot of noise. So there are a few ideas there. But interested to ask the group if anyone else has any other solutions for dealing with noise to share, or any specific examples of noise that they have in their environment that they've learned to deal with. No? Okay. No problem. Go on, Felipe. Hi.
Okay. One of the things that I think we should bear in mind is the fact that if our places are populated with family, children, and that kind of thing, we need to choose an appropriate time in order to conduct projections. So I think taking into consideration whoever you live with, you should schedule an appropriate time for that to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really great point. Thanks for sharing that. And we do talk about the time in a bit more detail in another chapter, but that's really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, also Benoit put in the chat, you can use low forest noise from YouTube. It helps a lot.
A low what noise?
Low forests noise, forest noise.
Forest noise.
Yes, that is in
Nice.
YouTube. You can just Google like sounds, and the sounds of forest or other sounds
Yes.
that you like. And
You just need to make sure you don't get ads jumping up.
Yes. And there is a great app called, I think it's called Total Calm, right? Where you can choose noises from nature and set how long you want them to go on for. One point of attention here in this chapter is if we're too focused on trying to block out noise, this can also inadvertently block the inspirations and suggestions of the helpers who are trying to help you to have a projection right. And when this happens, your mind is somehow closing in on itself instead of going outwards in a projection. So while we do want to control the noise as much as possible, we don't want to give too much focus and attention to it. And then there is one last really interesting point in this chapter, which is that occasionally a noise such as an alarm going off, for example, can wake a semi-lucid projector up, causing an extra physical awakening rather than the usual physical awakening. So that would be an example of a noise being a good thing, right? And we don't have too many of those, but that's interesting. So on to the next slide, please, and over to you, Magali.
yes, this chapter talk about intraphysical assistant. It's not something that we usually talk about, right? But it's just like you have someone to assist you in the projection. And for what I understood, is not that someone is gonna be there with you in the room. They are gonna be outside, just taking care that no one enters and that he can be assistant. I have been seeing that in the labs like Serenarium, that you have a team outside and you're there and you know that no one is gonna be there or interrupt you. And he talks also about circle of vigilance, that is a different kind of intraphysical assistance. It's where people just send energy to the person that is projecting, but it's something that is not usual in our work, so I don't know much about that. So next slide, please, Michiko.
Chapter 186 is about talking about the physiological states prior to lucid projection. And there are a number of conditions actually that influence our physiological state prior to projecting, including our age, our health, our weight, our level of physical and mental fatigue, whether or not we're taking any medication, dieting or fasting, and also the amount and intensity of sport that we do. So another question here to the group, just thinking about exercise, do these endorphins, the feel-good hormones that we produce following exercise, help any of you to go out of the body? Do any of you have any experience with that? Or does anyone have any experience using breathing techniques that they've used in yoga, for example, to help leave the body? So I'm just interested to hear if anyone has anything to contribute about this link between exercise and projection.
Yeah, for me, the breathing technique helps a lot.
Right, and can you explain a little bit what that technique is, Silvana?
It's pretty much, it's you pay attention for your breathing. It's like a meditation. It's pretty much just calm down. calm down the mind. And I also notice that like in the morning when I do exercise action, not when I'm going to do any projection, first thing in the morning, I notice that I have lucid dreams, at least lucid dreams. And these techniques are like, there are many different techniques, but the one I use most is like you count like 5, breathing 5, and then you hold 5, and then
Right.
you breathe out 5.
Yes.
And
yes.
also that nostril, also switch nostrils.
Yes.
Yeah, there are a couple.
Yeah, they're really interesting, Silvana, and great examples, because I know both of those techniques help to produce a really deep state of relaxation, right? And that's what we really need to achieve if we're going to leave the body. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's like you're preparing your body for if you do in the morning, you prepare your body for the day, you know,
Yes.
and the relaxation before going to bed is really
Yes.
helpful as well.
Thanks for sharing. Does anyone else have any examples about this link between exercise and projection that they want to share? Okay, so move on. Just to finish off with this chapter, Dr. Vieira also notes that a woman's menstrual cycle, premenstrual tension, breastfeeding, menopause, all of these things can have a strong influence over her physiology. So it's really important to understand your physiological state, and then by noting the details of that in your projective diary, over time you can come to understand, of course, what is the ideal physiological state for you to project. So again, there are lots of tips about this topic in the chapter, so do be sure to take the time to read through those. We can go to the next slide.
So here I think is the most interesting for me. It's the consciential state prior to lucid projection. And so he talks about psychological conditions, like, you know, if you are anxious or tense, you know, that can make OB be more difficult to you, you know, or a lucid projection. And also, and here we can talk about lots of psychological states that you can be, that can be difficult. So physiological condition also. He talks about, like, you know, all these physiological conditions, like to be sleep is one of that, because many friends or colleagues that mine that already told me, oh, when I go to sleep, I normally try to do a projection. So that's normally when we go to sleep, we are too tired to be awake. So it's not, probably it's not the best time, because if you are too sleepy, it's difficult to achieve a lucid projection, because you have to be lucid when you go out. So that is a kind of example of physiological condition. So also he talks about connections prior the projection. So what is your connections before the projections? And so if you can see which ones can be beneficial to you and which ones can be unfavorable to you to have a lucid projection. So here we can talk about movies, we can talk about books. No, what kind of books we know already. So let's read books that is talking about projection, but not only projection, also evolve themes that you have interest in, discover more. That can also be something that bring you towards the projection and know more about that theme. Also, you can watch documentaries like Planets, no? documentaries that talk about planets can help you to have an exo projection. So it's also all about this mental saturation technique that you can saturate your mind with themes that is important to you and try to project with that. But also, what is unfavorable to your projections? Sometimes even a contact with a person that you stuck with that problem, you know, can be something that prevents you to even sleep, because you are so worried about that you can even sleep. Imagine if you can have a projection. So be attentive to those things. So if you are in the games, that's okay, but before you sleep, you watch a violent movie, even if you have some kind of lucidity, what kind of experience you probably can relate with that thing. So those things is the one. And I want to ask here if anyone have an example of all those things about difficulties you had already to have projection, or things that facilitate you to have a projection. I don't know if anyone wants to share.
Can I share some experiences? For example, I'm a teacher, I'm a physics teacher, and usually I realize that after a full day of work, I assimilate a lot of energies from my students, from other teachers, from the environment, and once in a while, it is hard for me to de-assimilate that energy and get rid of the anxiety, get rid of the stress. My stress levels are sometimes high in a way that it makes it difficult for me to chill, relax, and eventually lay down in bed and try to project. Even later at night, it is difficult, because if I don't work properly with my energies in order to foster the assimilation, then it makes it really tough for me to get out of my body and experience the extra physical dimension. Anyhow, and one of the things that I have adopted is to create a more technical, a more technical procedure in order to make sure that I'll be tracking down my energetic physiology, so as to promote more often the projections. I haven't achieved anything so far, but I've just started this process, and we'll see how it goes eventually. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing, Felipe. And I think, that's a discussion we can have, and we are gonna present some things, because that's really common. We get from work and we live sometimes a busy life and a lot of stuff, and then how we go to have a projection. So that is something to think about and also to discuss more. So next slide.
Chapter 188 is looking at what is the ordinary physical waking state. And the definition of this is the awake or conscious state of the intraphysical consciousness. And that's classified as either a state of coincidence or discoincidence. And a high quality lucid projection is really heavily influenced by our psychophysiology prior to projecting. So, for example, if you're feeling very emotional prior to projecting, the emotions will also prevail during the extraphysical period, and this, of course, can really diminish the clarity of your perceptions. But on the other hand, if you're in a calm state of emotional balance or equilibrium and feeling very serene prior to leaving the body, excuse me, you will achieve a conscientially more advanced projection. So that's a comment there on the psychophysiology projectility. Next slide, please.
So here is about the physical position. And so while you reading these chapters, you see that he goes in details, you know, and those details are really important in the end. That is, why is your position so important? Because your position can also prevent you to go out of the body, and also can be something that brings you out from your projection. Why? Because it's a physiological thing. If you are in a position that you are pressing your arm and then it starts to have this numbness, your body will take you back to act on that, and you have to move. And all this doesn't help us to have a projection. We think, oh, we are there, we can project. No, it's not so easy. A noise can bring you back, a position can bring you back. And so you have this rupture in the projection you are in. And also in the memory, because you wake up lots of times. So that is a good thing to think about. So Sandy, can you be the next one, please? Next
Sure.
slide.
Next slide.
Talk about the best.
Yeah,
position.
so indeed. So the dorsal position, the definition of the dorsal position is lying on your back, and this really is the favourite position of lucid projectors, and there's two reasons for that. If we look at that from the extra-physical perspective, it's seen as positive because upon leaving the body in almost all lucid projections, and also in the separation, right, the discoincidence of sleep every night, the psychosoma remains in the dorsal position and floats above the human body before standing up, and the consciousness acquiring a greater extra-physical self-awareness. So I wanted to ask the question here, does anyone have any experience to share of having a lucid projection starting from a position other than the dorsal position? Just was curious to ask that question.
Well, once I had one lucid projection. I sleep on my side, but in that occasion, when I projected, I looked at my body, I saw myself sleeping, and I was in the dorsal position. So
that's
so
really
probably,
interesting.
Yeah, so my body might have moved, and then when I saw myself sleeping, I was in this dorsal position.
That's interesting.
Yes. Actually, I think the dorsal position makes the things easier. But the problem is it's not really a natural thing to me to do, because I think a lot of people used to be on the side, like in the same position like you were born, you know. And this is something that maybe you have to manage because it makes the dorsal position actually really makes the things better. But it's kind of hard, I find it.
Yeah, I think that's a really a comment that probably a lot of people can relate to, Benoit. And I'm certainly one of those, because I sleep on my stomach, almost face down. And so when I started thinking about having to, you know, sleep in the dorsal position, for me, that was a 180-degree turn, the total opposite of what I used to. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'll never manage to do that. But what was interesting for me was once I started doing penta, and of course you're lying in the dorsal position for penta, and doing that on a daily basis, bit by bit, I found I became very comfortable in that position in penta. And then often I found, and I still do, that when I wake up in the morning, I'm in the dorsal position. So my message here is that if I can do that, anyone can do that. Just one final comment here about this position is from so we talked about the extra-physical perspective of that, but from the intra-physical perspective, the dorsal position favours lucid projection because it predisposes a reduction in oxygen in the cerebral hemispheres, and this is known as cortical hypoxia. And cortical hypoxia can, for some people, be quite an efficient projective technique. So I think we can...
I would like to make a quick comment, just because it's been kind of life-changing for me, something I realized a little while ago. In the book, Waldo talks about, he talks about the issue that sometimes people in the dorsal position have with snoring. You know, the mouth drops down.
Oh, yeah.
You start to snore. He has quite an elaborate little account of propping a pillow under your chin.
Yes.
And so I've never thought of that. It seems, I don't know, I think it would add discomfort, but I've actually started mouth taping at night, probably about a year ago. And it's been really profound because it changed the way I breathe. So it greatly improved my ability to breathe through my nose in ways I didn't even realize I was having an issue with it until I did that, right? So
wow.
And I found it incredible. I actually find it strangely soothing. So I don't know, it's like a acupressure point or something. There's something very calming about just having the tape on the lips for me. So I find it very helpful.
Yeah, interesting. So you're only breathing through the nose, Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mouth is taped shut. So.
Wow. Okay. Good insights. Thanks everyone for jumping in. It's really making our discussion rich. I think we go to the next slide. Yes, Magali, over to you.
Yes, here is the condition of human body prior to lucidity projections and clothes of projectors. So here is more to remove all factors that can disturb the natural development of OBE. So it's interesting if you can see, is there anything that can bring me back? So that can be, you know, the pressure that you have from the cushions, can be, you know, your pajamas that should be more like more, how do you say that? So more loose, right?
Loose,
So
yeah.
try to be, try to ask yourself if there is anything in your space that can bring you back. That is the real question. Let's go to the next one. So
here in this, we're talking about the objects of the projector, right? And so although the projector's clothing and all these other objects that we might have on us, right, like a belt, hairband, all the different jewelry we could wear, watches, eyeglasses and so on, even though none of these will prevent a projection from occurring or hamper the agility of either the psychosoma or the mental soma outside of the body, Dr. Vieira really recommends we simplify the condition of our physical body when trying to project, with a view to reducing any negative psychological associations with. Magali, did you have something to add here?
Sorry, I was mute, right? No, I think is that. I think that is
yes,
the object
okay.
is really important. So
yeah, okay. So we can move on to the next chapter. Psalm 94 is talking about now the causes of lucid projection. And in fact, the causes can be classified into two basic perspectives, and objective. So subjective causes, these are the ones that originate inside of the consciousness. So some common examples here are dreams, extreme pain, the hypnagogic state, physiological discoincidence every night during sleep. So this is the separation, right, of the psychosoma from the physical body. And this, in fact, is the most common of a lucid projection, this subjective one. Some other examples, the vibrational state, and most importantly, not to get own will. So those are a few examples. Dr. Vieira again lists more in the chapter. And then the objective causes of lucid projection, these are the ones that originate outside of the consciousness. So some common examples here, anesthesia, desoma, drugs, a near-death experience, things like a physical accident or a surgery, among a few others. And of course, we don't recommend going for those ones to try and have a projection.
That's it.
Just a question to throw in here. Does anyone have any experiences of the subjective causes I was speaking about, or any of the other subjective causes that they would like to share? No.
I think we are also almost in our time, so we should.
Yes, okay, Magali, so I'll let you jump into the next slide then.
Good. So here the author talk about the distance, right? There is an important factor here because there is this mini discoincidence that means that you're discoincident and you are just up to your body, no? Just in a little discoincidence from your body that is considered a projection, but it's just a little one. So that is the complete exit. That can be 1 meter in your room, some meters around your house, right? That is more, and that is the one that you are more close to your body, and that there is this maxi discoincidence that I think it is the one that everyone wants here, right? But is also the one more rare to do it with lucidity and also go kilometers or, you know, through oceans or to another planet is much more difficult. But he classified these 3 types of distance for your body. Next one, please.
Chapter 196 talks about the starting time of the projective experiment, and logically the best is to choose a time, of course, that's not interfering with your daily routine, your work, looking after your children, all of these sorts of things, and also to stick to that time to facilitate the assistance of the helpers. So, of course, a lucid projection can be produced at any time, but Dr. Vieira suggests that the ideal is to do it either at dawn or in the second half of the night. And he's very precise about that being between midnight and 3 a.m. And why between midnight and 3 a.m.? A couple of reasons. One is because the majority of your local population is asleep at that time, meaning that their mental concentration is not focused on you. And secondly, between midnight and 3 a.m. Is the time that the pineal gland is producing maximum amount of melatonin. And melatonin, of course, helps us to relax and go to sleep, actually. And then there's a third interesting point about the timing, which is the best time to have a projection for those of extra physical assistance is between 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. And that's because this period is known as the time of greatest human anguish, Why is this period called that? It's because people finish work, and typically at work, you know, they've got their social connections, they're surrounded by people and teams, and they're busy and so on. But then when they finish work, they go home, and then they're confronted with all sorts of things: their loneliness, their sadness, their unfulfilled needs. It could be the challenges of their personal relationships. And of course, conditions like this are particularly prevalent in big cities where the support of smaller, more intimate communities can be absent. So if you're interested to do extra physical assistance between 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. Is a really good time to try to do that. Next slide then.
Sorry. Here is the preparation for lucid projection. Even if it's not in those chapters, this is the start of techniques, right? But it's important because that one is the resume. It's not the resume, the synthesis of all what we've been talking about, prepare for lucid projection. So there is a list of, it's really good if everyone can read this chapter, it's 197, but there is a list of behavior that we can do to have to prepare ourselves to lucid projections. So I put highlight some here that I think is more important to talk about, is attending to psychological needs, right? Go to the bathroom, because otherwise you have to wake up to go. So try to go to the bathroom before, try to do all your hygiene. Like Felipe was saying, vibrational state and sterilization of energy. I know that in my experience, I had a projection just by trying to exteriorize a whole night. So try it. Do your, try experience different things with energy to go out of your body. So self-determination, be determined, is your will. So your willpower will help you to get a lucid projection if you really want. And saturate your mind with intention of projection, with all those things, right? And use projection technique. Use that. Use all you have to have a projection. Your will, energy, saturate your mind with that. Use a technique. And now I have also a question here for you all, as we are getting to the end of this presentation. What do you think prevent you the most from having a lucid projection?
Thanks, Sandy. And Sandy, yeah, I was thinking maybe this is a good chance to break out into our rooms and maybe discuss this question or share anything that you want to in smaller groups. Does that sound all right?
Yes, thanks, Michiko. That'd be good.
Okay, great. So I'll open up the rooms now and we'll have about 15-minute discussion. Okay, great. Looks like everyone's back, and I hope you enjoyed your discussions within your group. So now we're just gonna, if anyone would like to share, ask some questions just within the larger group. I think it's nice to hear maybe what you've talked about in your groups, if you want to share, or if you have any further questions for Magali and Sandy, feel free to speak up.
Well, I might just...
Daniela, go ahead as well after Kim's spoken. Feel free.
Oh yeah, okay. I was just gonna. There was a passage in the book that so he's talking about the color of our clothing, right? The color of clothing when you go to sleep. And essentially says something like, there are some that suggest that certain colors should be avoided because they can intoxicate your aura, and it's something that requires further research. And I mean, I don't know, I suppose I'm curious what other people think. For me, that is the sort of aspect of spirituality or, you know, multidimensional stuff where I don't think that, I find it hard to imagine that there is much weight in it. It sort of strikes me as a kind of a, you know, cultural superstition or cultural practices from different cultures where people value certain colors. So I was a bit surprised that, you know, he kind of allows it as a possibility and doesn't have anything else to say about it, but I was curious what other people have to say. And I know that a lot of Conscientiology folk like white, but yeah.
I've read this chapter and caught my attention also, Kim. And then when I see that, I saw that he talked about toxins, you know, in some type of, actually in that chapter, he talks about, if I don't mistake, about some type of dye that they use in the clothes. It's about that he was talking, right? But I understand.
So that's not what I got from it. I didn't get anything about dyes and toxins in clothing. I just got something about color somehow. Because he talks about it intoxicating your aura, right? Which even that whole idea I find problematic.
Yeah.
One thing that I would say on this is that more important than the color of the cloth itself, it is the kind of energetic load that this cloth has. Okay, so we have that book, Energetic Rubbish. And then one thing that's important is really to check what's the pattern, the type of energies that you have on the clothes that you're using. Like this last couple of weeks, I have been checking objects and clothes that I have. And some of them I realized that they were very negative, like I took them away. So it was, and the good and bad clothes to use like that, I feel like that it was like a ill energy or healthy energy. They were not related to the colors. They were related maybe to where the clothes came from, what kind of work, labor it was used for that cloth to be manufactured, or it was like my mood when I was using it several times. Maybe one heterofeed each other, but it's really, I think that's important to check, okay, what the energies that you have on your clothes that you're using. That would be my suggestion, even more important of the color itself.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, that is because I do notice that some items of clothing, even though they've just been mine, they're not secondhand clothing. I'm the only one who's ever worn them. Some I feel good in and others I do not. So that's interesting to think about all those different factors that you just mentioned.
Please, just to add to what Marcelo you were saying, I went to buy Zara sometimes, and I don't know why I couldn't wear any of the clothes I bought there. And then I think it was Jeffrey that told me once, if I don't mistake, that there was all this, you know, slavery about clothes things and how they do it. And actually I stopped to buy because I couldn't, everything I bought there, and I think it is about that, energetic things in the clothes.
I'm actually also interested to understand a little bit more about the colour aspect though, right? And I'm wondering if anyone on the call who's lived at SAIAC maybe can give some more insights as to why, you know, it's so prevalent that people are wearing white, apart from the obvious of being in a you know, an experiment where it's dark, and people need to wear white to be seen.
Yeah, I think the psychological impact of a lot of those things and colours and so on is perhaps something we underestimate a lot, and how it affects the person's mood and attitude and just what it does internally for people. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to study more.
Yeah.
Sorry, people. Waldo once says the color is important because the community, astrophysical community more advanced they used to use the white or the blue. And when he put this color in himself, he can do a rapport with those communities, and he think he was one of representing, I don't know how can I say that, on Earth of those communities.
Interesting, Felipe. I hadn't heard that before. That's, yeah, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, I heard that before, but I think in terms of projectiology, it's more like the energy, like what Magali mentioned. Maybe someone else tried that clothing that you bought, you know, and put the energy there, or your state of mind. I think it's more important
Yes,
than
of course.
anything else. I don't know if
Yes.
there is any, I actually don't know if there is any link between the color or in the projection, the quality of projection you have, but I think the state of mind is more priority than anything else.
Yes, because in psychology, when you are wearing the white clothes, you are more mind open. So when you are more mind open, you are more energy open, so your energy is flowing, you know. So the energy when it's flowing, it's easier to make a projection.
Yeah, there is something about the colors that we all have heard about, and I think Waldo also said, I haven't heard about from him, but it's about like dark colors is more close, right? It contains the other color, and white is more open. There is something about colors like this, but I think is the most important is the energy. And if it helps or not, I don't know. I like colors. Sometimes I think colors can help, blue and other colors. There is a whole studies about that, colors. So.
Yes, I think so too, Magali.
I think that colors, this discussion is interesting because the two things, I don't think it's separated. Colors is a vibration, is a mind state too, and it's all related with your energy. So it's not two separated things. I don't know if I could explain what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I agree with Daniela. For me, it's not a separate things too, because your state of mind can influence your energy, cannot will influence your energy. So when you are more, I don't know, more open for this, your energy are too.
Yes, it's also important to bear in mind that if you see too much of a color or you have affinity with a certain color, it's worth researching that beyond the energy, beyond the phenomena and other stuff. Like let's suppose someone likes orange too much or something, or towards that color or any other color or factor prior to the projective experience. That could mean a holophosinic link with that. In orange, for example, it's the color of the Buddhism, you know. So it's a clue. It's a clue. It's another item in your research, self-research inventory, you know. It can contribute. But what prevails is your mindset, is your intention, regardless of any color or any shade of anything like that.
So a very interesting discussion about the color of clothing. Does anyone have any other questions about anything that we presented today or on this topic of, you know, the preparation for the projection? I think there's one more point I wanted to add. Something I found really helpful was learning that during that preparation, it's worth just like really taking your time to understand the setup that you need to be in that perfect position, really comfortable, where you can completely then forget about the physical body, right? Because if the physical body is calling your attention in some way, of course, it's more difficult to leave the body. So taking the time to understand how many, do you need pillows under your arms? Kim, your comment was really interesting, you know, taping your mouth. It's something a lot of us wouldn't think about. And maybe in order for each of us to leave the body lucidly and more frequently, it could be just something small or large, but that is very specific to us. What is the height of the pillows that you need under your head? Should they be soft? Should they be hard? Do you need pillows under your knees? What is the cover like? So it's worth really just taking the time and experimenting bit by bit by bit with all of that to learn what's going to work well for you and allow you to forget about the physical body and focus your attention on the extra physical dimension.
Yeah, I also think we could throw here a question about what do you think that prevents you the most from having lucid projection? Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought my microphone was okay, but so what do you think prevents you the most from having a lucid projection? I think that is a good question. I'm gonna put here in the chat. If anyone can, you know, have any idea about that and want to share, or even if you want to share something that you were talking on your break rooms that you think is important to bring, we still have some time. Oh, Pamela put something here in the chat that is feeling afraid. So anyone can share, can fear, no? Anyone can relate it to that? Do you think fear is one thing that prevents us to go out of our body?
Hello, everyone. For me, it is, I'm very sorry, I won't turn on my camera. But for me, it is, I think I feel very afraid. I don't have many experience, but the few experience which I have, my main problem was the fear. Even with the presence of extra-physical helpers, I feel, I don't know, I think I need to study more and give more importance to this aspect, because I feel very afraid.
What are you afraid of, Pamela?
I don't know. I think it's because I'm not inside that much in this subject. I came from Spiritism, okay? And during long time, I was not encouraged to have this practice, okay? So I don't know. I feel afraid to see something bad, to don't deal well with the situation. I have some freezing when I'm seeing when I feel wake up outside my body. It's freezing because it's not. I don't know. I'm when I get to feel my body awake outside of my physical body. It's not normal. But when I have some experience like I don't know, when I'm like in that dream like kind of projection, I feel very free, very comfortable, very okay. Also, this is not my focus. Like I'm more with the material life. I think that's the main point. I'm with my work, with my studies. I don't have that mind saturation with the subject. Then I think need more mind saturation and knowledge about it. But my dream-like kind of projections always very good, very therapeutic and very meaningful for my life. And it's very good. I have very good experiences with the dream-like kind of experience, but the lucid experience for me, oh my God, I feel very afraid when I see those energetic connections with my body. I don't know. I don't know. I think when I got this experience, I was not ready.
Interesting points, Pamela. And I can relate it to you in the terms of prioritizing this. I think the time I prioritized projection, I had a lot of projection. And now that I'm not prioritizing that, like as I used to, I'm having problems. So also Silvana said I'm the other way around. I'm too excited and go back to my body, right?
Yeah, it happened many times. When I'm lucid out of my body, I feel so happy and I want to do so many things that I go back to my body instead of going out. They like one time I wanted to see, I made a promise to myself, as soon as I'm projected, I look at my body straight away. But when I did it, it was completely wrong decision, because then I was back. I tried to look at my body. Actually, I couldn't see. It was very weird. I couldn't see my body, and then I was back to my body, because in the past I would see my body, but in my way back already. You know, not when after the takeoff. So then it was fine. But when I made the decision that I wanted to see my body straight away, and then I couldn't see anything.
Good. It's really common. And also Sergio say, even after many experiments, the cataleptic state still causes me discomfort, and I end up not having the projection.
Yes, yes, because when you're fully lucid from the beginning until the end, it's a very when you enter the cataleptic state and the sensation of you're practically experimenting your desoma in a way, So even going through it, sometimes it's a very remarkable, very very impacting experience, and that when I begin to get cataleptic, I have to change the position and no, I don't want to be lucid during this transition. I'd rather appear projected somewhere else, and that's okay. But sometimes you have to face it. Everyone has to face that. It's not so much discomfort nowadays, but it's still a very remarkable moment that, the lucid takeoff.
Yeah, thanks. I can really relate to that, Sergio, that feeling of discomfort and that association of it with the desoma and so on. And it also relates to for me, with the dorsal position, I get to this place of discomfort and I just have to turn around because it's like, it just happens automatically. My body just does it really. But we have to wrap it up. We're just about out of time. And I feel this is a good discussion to have before introducing this, the technique for this coming month, because I think there's a common theme, right? I think for a lot of us that we don't have a lot of projections, we have other priorities in life, and so on. And obviously applying techniques is something that can really help us with that. So, and I think, well, for me, I guess each technique works differently for different people. That's why there is such a variety. I really like these visualization kind of techniques. They tend to work. I seem to respond well to that. So it's chapter 216, as you can see. And I'm not going to go through it now, but I would encourage everybody. I mean, yeah, have a look at it. It's very short. Maybe do it now after the call before we go off and life takes over. Have a look at it. Pick a technique. Pick one of the visualizations that resonates with you, with your sort of idea, and set out using some of the things that were discussed today. After you've had a sleep, waking yourself up at like 4 in the morning, for example, for a little bit, and then going back to sleep. Or if you have sort of lifestyle that allows you to do it in the middle of the day, maybe doing that, and endeavor to apply the technique, a few times between now and the next session. So yeah, that's it. The next session is on the 19th of March. I don't know right now, Michiko, do you know who and what?
It will be Adina and Patricia, that they are here, right? And we'll be discussing actually the projection phase, right?
Mm.
Yep, great. So thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey guys.
See you again soon. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.